Okay, let's unpack this headline that practically jumps off the page. Qatar potentially gifting Trump $400 million luxury jet. I mean, a flying palace. It's quite something.
It really is, yeah. Quite a statement. And this isn't just, random chatter. We're doing a deep dive today, looking into a report that's definitely stirred the pot. It originated from a YouTube video, I believe, by Occupy Democrats.
Right.
And the core of it is this potential gift. And then, importantly, Qatar's denial that came later.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to get under the skin of this. What are the nuts and bolts of this supposed gift? What kind of reaction did it cause? And, well, why is Qatar now pushing back? We'll try to piece it together for you.
Okay, so let's start with the alleged gift itself. The initial reports, and ABC News picked this up, citing multiple sources, they painted a pretty specific picture.
Which was?
That Qatar intended to give Donald Trump this $400 million Boeing 747-8 jet, a massive plane.
Wow.
And the idea, according to these sources, was that he could use it, both during and potentially after his presidency, maybe even transfer it to this private foundation eventually.
And the timing here, it's kind of hard to ignore, isn't it?
Yeah.
This news seemed to pop up right after we heard about Trump's new golf course.
Yes.
And that huge, $5.5 billion beachside project also happening in Qatar?
Exactly. That sequence, the timing, it definitely adds a layer of intrigue. You can see why people might raise an eyebrow.
Sure.
And it definitely got reactions quickly, particularly from Democrats in Congress.
Yeah.
They immediately pointed to the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution.
Okay, yeah, let's just quickly break that down for everyone. The Emoluments Clause, that's the bit that basically says federal officials can't just take gifts from foreign countries, right? Not
Right.
without Congress signing off.
Precisely. It's designed as a safeguard, fundamentally, to prevent undue influence and protect the integrity of U.S. officials.
Makes sense.
So when this story about the jet broke, prominent Democrats voiced pretty strong objections. They saw it as a potential violation of that core principle. It really highlights this ongoing tension, doesn't it, between, engaging internationally and guarding against foreign influence, especially with big names.
And we saw some pretty sharp comments, like Senator Chuck Schumer's line, what was it? Nothing says America first like Air Force One brought to you by Qatar. That one sticks.
It does. It's memorable, yeah. And Representative Adam Schiff had similar thoughts. He said something like, seems pretty clear that a $400 million air palace from a foreign emir qualifies as a constitutional violation.
Strong words.
Definitely. It shows how seriously they were taking this alleged offer.
But then the story takes a turn. Qatar steps in and says, hold on, that's not quite right.
Exactly.
Hmm?
Qatar's media attaché here in the U.S., Alia Ansari, he spoke to Politico.
Yeah.
And he basically said the reports were inaccurate.
Inaccurate how?
Well, he stated that any potential transfer of an aircraft like this is actually still under legal review in both countries, the U.S. and Qatar. And crucially, he said there's no formal agreement, nothing signed, and no announcement planned during Trump's upcoming trip to the Middle East, which does include a stop in Qatar.
So Qatar's official line is, this isn't a done deal, maybe not even happening. Seems straightforward, but is it? Because there's another side to this.
No, it's not quite the end of the story. What makes this really interesting is the counter-narrative. It's coming from multiple U.S. officials who claim to have direct knowledge.
Okay.
And these sources are suggesting that, yes, talks did happen. One official apparently confirmed discussions between the Qatari Defense Ministry and the Pentagon about this.
Right, so actual talks.
And to go further, a former official, also supposedly in the know, backed this up, said the Qatari emir really did intend to gift the plane. It wasn't just like a theoretical idea being floated.
So now we've got a real conflict. Qatar says one thing, these U.S. officials are saying something quite different.
We do. And that leads to the big question here, doesn't it? Is Qatar maybe backtracking publicly now, trying to diffuse the political heat after the initial reports caused a stir? Or was the original reporting just wrong? That's the puzzle.
Yeah, that's the core issue we're left grappling with. And then adding another wrinkle to this whole situation is the name Pam Bondi popping up again.
Right. What's being reported is Pam Bondi's apparent approval of this potential $400 million jet gift from Qatar to Trump.
Okay, and why is that significant?
Well, it raises questions when you look at her professional background, specifically her past work as a registered lobbyist.
Ah, okay. She lobbied for Qatar, didn't she?
Yes, that's the connection.
Yeah.
She was a registered lobbyist for the Qatari government. Reports mention a pretty substantial fee, something like $115,000 a month.
Wow.
And the criticism that emerged, particularly when she was being considered for Attorney General, was that she hadn't properly disclose this relationship as a potential conflict of interest. And beyond Qatar, reports also mention her lobbying for other major players, Amazon, Uber, private prison contractors while she was at Ballard Partners.
So the concern, from critics at least, is these undisclosed ties, especially the one with Qatar, now intersecting with her reported approval of this huge potential gift from that same government.
Exactly. It adds another layer of complexity and for some raises red flags about potential influences.
Definitely something that makes you stop and think. Now, just shifting gears slightly, the YouTube video we mentioned, the source for some of this, also touched on a couple of other points, related but separate.
Yeah, I did briefly. One was Representative Richie Torres questioning the Treasury Secretary. It was about tariffs and their impact on American manufacturing.
How does that connect?
He used the Boeing 727 as an example, actually, pointing out it has something like 6 million components. It illustrates just how incredibly complex global supply chains are and how difficult it is to just, bring all that manufacturing back to the U.S. Think about sourcing parts from all over the world for just one jet. It highlights that challenge.
Makes sense. And Representative Torres is also tied into the main Qatar story, too, isn't he?
He is, yes. He's actually called for an investigation into Trump potentially receiving this plane from Qatar.
Okay.
So his call for an investigation really underlines how seriously some lawmakers are taking these reports and the push for clarity on what actually went down.
And the video also mentioned, just briefly, this idea about suspending habeas corpus, something apparently getting support from some Republicans.
Yes, that was mentioned too. It's obviously a very different and controversial topic, not directly linked to the Qatar jet story itself.
Right.
But its inclusion in the same source material sort of gives you a glimpse into the broader range of significant and sometimes contentious ideas circulating within or around Trump's sphere.
Okay. So bringing this all back together then, the main thing is this clear contradiction, right? You've got Qatar officially denying this huge potential gift. But then you have reports citing multiple U.S. officials saying the talks were real, the intention was real.
Exactly. And that fundamental conflict leaves you, the listener, with some pretty important questions. What does this whole situation, however it ends up resolving, tell us about the complexities of international deals and the kind of intense scrutiny that public figures, especially former presidents, operate under?
Yeah. And maybe even more fundamentally, what are the potential long-term implications, for the relationships between countries, for transparency, for government ethics, when these kinds of interactions and allegations surface?
Definitely a lot to think about there.
Yeah.
It really touches on some core issues of trust and influence in international politics.